All right, let's dive right into this explainer and unravel what I think is one of the most fascinating and frankly terrifying paradoxes in Philippine criminal law. Today, we're going to look really closely at a foundational legal principle that dictates our everyday lives. And then we're going to completely shatter it by exploring its most extreme exceptions. Common sense tells us that laws end where borders end, right? But is that actually always true? I want you to think about this. How on earth could a crime committed far beyond our shores, literally in the middle of nowhere, still land a perpetrator squarely inside a local Philippine courtroom? Section 1. The Rule of Territoriality. To solve this mystery, we first have to ground ourselves in the absolute bedrock of criminal jurisdiction. So, the basic rule here is pretty straightforward. Our land, our laws. Under Article 14 of the new Civil Code and, crucially, Article 2 of the Revised Penal Code, criminal law is strictly territorial. It is binding on absolutely anyone who lives or even just temporarily sojourns in the Philippines. Basically, if you're here, you play by our rules. I like to picture territoriality as this massive, invisible geographic bubble. And it's not just the dirt beneath our feet either. This bubble encapsulates the entire Philippine archipelago. It shoots straight up into the atmosphere, subject to international right-of-way for foreign aircraft, of course, and it plunges deep down into our interior waters, so our creeks, rivers, lakes, bays, the whole shebang. If you commit a crime inside this three-dimensional bubble, you answer to Philippine law, no matter what passport you hold.
Section 2. Breaking the bubble. But what happens when a crime leaks outside that invisible barrier?
Well, the opening sentence of Article 2 of the Revised Penal Code immediately hits us with a warning that this territorial bubble isn't actually absolute. It sets up the rule, sure, but it immediately carves a path for some serious, mind-bending legal exceptions. It explicitly states that our laws apply within the archipelago, except as provided in the treaties and laws of preferential application. Which brings us to Section 3, the Article 2 exceptions. So, the law gives us 5 specific scenarios where our legal reach extends way beyond our physical borders. Number 1, if you commit a crime on a Philippine ship or airship, even out in international waters, that's treated like a floating piece of our territory. 2 and 3, if you forge our currency or sneak counterfeit securities into the country, you're directly attacking our economy, and yeah, we will come after you for that. Number 4, if a public officer commits a crime while doing their job abroad, they still have to face the music back home. But it is this 5th exception, crimes against national security and the law of nations, that takes us into some incredibly dark, fascinating legal territory.
Section 4. Enemies of all mankind.
We're talking about this intense legal concept called hostis humani generis. It's Latin for enemies of all mankind. See, when criminals commit certain acts, like piracy on the high seas, they aren't just breaking one specific country's laws. They are offending humanity itself. For these people, territorial borders basically vanish. Any nation on Earth, including the Philippines, has the absolute right and arguably the duty to prosecute them, regardless of where the crime actually took place. Let's look at Section 5. People versus Lolo. Specifically, we're diving into GR number 1795-8, which was decided way back on February 27, 1922. This is a genuinely gruesome, landmark true crime case that pushed this extreme legal theory to its absolute limits. Here's the chilling timeline of how it went down. And keep in mind, this did not happen in the Philippines. It happened over in the waters of the Dutch East Indies. A group of armed Moro raiders attacked a Dutch boat. They ruthlessly robbed the passengers and committed horrific sexual violence against 2 women on board. They then tore holes in the boat, leaving the remaining victims stranded to sink, and carried the 2 women away. Days later, 2 of those raiders, Lolo and Saro, were found and arrested right here in the Filipino Islands. So after committing these horrifying atrocities in foreign waters against foreign nationals, their capture in the Philippines set the stage for an unprecedented legal showdown. Naturally, the defense team fought this tooth and nail. And you can kind of see their logic, right? They were saying, how can you try these men here? The crime happened entirely outside the Philippine geographic bubble. Not our ship, not our waters, not our citizens. But the Supreme Court of the Philippines, they saw it very differently. Justice Malcolm delivered what is basically a historic, absolute mic drop of a ruling. He wrote, "Piracy is a crime against all mankind. Pirates are hostis humani generis, and a competent tribunal of any state may punish piracy wherever the offender is found, even though the depredation occurred outside the ordinary territorial jurisdiction of the prosecuting state." This statement right here forever established in our jurisprudence that the sheer brutality of piracy completely shatters all territorial defenses. So the court completely rejected the idea of isolating this overseas act. They viewed it as a continuing enterprise of piracy, giving the Philippines exceptional extraterritorial jurisdiction. The original trial judgment for Saro was affirmed. But for Lolo, the Supreme Court actually reversed the lower court's penalty just to make it harsher. Because of the extreme aggravating circumstances of their brutal acts, Lolo was sentenced to the absolute extreme penalty of death.
Section 6. Why jurisdiction matters. Now, you're probably wondering why we're spending time on a bloody piracy case from 1922. Why does a century-old maritime law actually matter to us today? Well, because the extraterritorial principles established by Lolo are the exact same foundations we rely on right now. Take Presidential Decree number 532, which imposes incredibly strict penalties to fiercely discourage piracy in our waters. But it goes way beyond just pirates on boats. Look at Section 49 of the modern Anti-Terrorism Act. It specifically applies extraterritorial jurisdiction, meaning if a Filipino commits terror acts outside the country, or if someone commits terror acts against the Philippines while physically outside our borders, we can still reach them. The core logic of the Lolo case, that some crimes are so fundamentally heinous they become a continuing enterprise against humanity, is the literal legal weapon our courts use to fight transnational crimes today. So, I want to leave you with this final, kind of crazy thought. That geographic bubble of territoriality, it was drawn up in an era of slow ships and physical borders. But today, a hacker sitting on the exact opposite side of the planet can cripple a hospital in Manila in seconds. Terrorist networks operate entirely in the digital ether. As our world gets hyper-connected and crimes become borderless, are we all inevitably moving toward a single global jurisdiction where the exception actually becomes the rule? It's a terrifying yet completely fascinating legal frontier. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the boundaries of the world around you.